Welcome back to Let's Make a Game. In this video, I'm going to continue talking about tactical combat, specifically talking about how we have written some example code which sets up a very simple battlefield and then displays it. So we've gone through the initialize passage, which sets up the variables. We've gone through the setup enemies passage, which sets up the positions and initial hit points of the enemies. And now we're looking at display arena, which does the printing out of the situation. The way that it works is very simple overall. We have two for loops, one for the y coordinate, one for the x coordinate, and that allows us to go through each square of the battlefield or arena and display what is on there. As you can see, we have dark and light squares, and each square can be empty, or it can have a monster on it, or it can have the hero on it. So that gives us 6 possibilities. And we need to have artwork for all 6. So we have dark and light for the empty squares, hero underscore dark, hero underscore light for the ones with the hero, and monster underscore dark, monster underscore light for the ones with the monsters. As we add more features, we will need more artwork. I would like to remind you of this bit of code, $ART, which was quite a long and complicated looking bit of code. This is to do with how we display these graphics without any gaps. The default in Twine is that they will display with little gaps in between them. And to get around this, we need to use a very specific bit of code. So here's what that is. We go div style equals quote. This slash quote just means don't end the string with this quote. This quote is part of the string. That's why we have a slash quote, to distinguish it from the quote at the end. So div style equals quote width 64 times x. You'll remember that x is one of the dimensions of the area. Px, meaning pixels. Height 64 times y. Px. Y being the other dimension. So we set it up as being a div, roughly a paragraph, which has a width of exactly this many pixels and a height of exactly this many pixels. And because all of these graphics are 64 pixels by 64 pixels, there will be no room for gaps if we display them. And therefore, it will display them as we wish them to be displayed, which is to say, without any gaps, and starting a new row where there's meant to be a new row. So we start with Z being this bit of code that sets up the div. Down the bottom, we will have to have a slash div to close off the div. And then we have these two for loops for print y equals y, print y over 0, print y minus minus. Notice that it's going down in number. The reason it's going down in number is because this row is y equals 1, this row is y equals 2, this row is y equals 3. So it has to print the row with the highest y value first. We ask first, should it be a light or a dark background? And that depends on whether, when we add print x and print y, and divide by 2, do we have no remainder or a remainder of 1? And that makes it light and dark, and that creates a checkered pattern. And we store that in Z2. If the square that we're printing is the one that the hero is on, in other words, if print x equals hero x and print y equals hero y, we set Z3 equal to hero underscore. Otherwise, we set that to blank, but if we set it to blank, we go through all the monsters And if we find that the square we're printing is the same as the location of a monster, we change Z3 to monster underscore. Then finally, we set Z plus equals, meaning add to its current value, that $art plus Z3 plus Z2. So Z3 might be monster underscore, and then Z2 might be light.png. And that will be that graphic there, monster underscore light. Similarly, sometimes it'll be hero underscore dark, or most of the time it'll just be these light and dark ones, because most of them will be empty. This art variable is a HTML command. It is img, which is short for image, just as img is short for image when we use it as a Sugarcube command. But note that the HTML img command and the Sugarcube img command are quite different. So img style equals quote height 64 pixels, width 64 pixels, float left. I don't know quite what that means, but you do have to put it in. I've tried leaving it out and it doesn't work. src, which means source. Art slash, well, what's the source going to be? It's going to be whatever is in Z3 and whatever is in Z2. So hero underscore light.png or whatever it may be. At the end, we print out all this code and it displays all the pictures. And because we've specified that this div has to have a width of exactly 64 pixels times the width of the arena in squares, and similar for the height, there's no room for gaps, and we get everything printed out the way we want it, which is without any gaps, as if it was a continuous picture. But you can see if you try to select it, that you can select individual pictures. So it's not printing one big picture. This is a bunch of small pictures, but they don't have any gaps. So we've printed out our arena. Well, now we have to let the hero and the monsters actually move and fight, of course. And that's what we'll be looking at in the next video, along with making sure that all of the monsters are on separate squares, because we haven't done anything to make that happen yet. And I may change the names of some of the variables. I think it was probably a mistake to have X and Y as the size of the arena. But I will leave it there for now. I hope that was useful or interesting to at least some of you, and I hope you will tune in next time.